So Jess, what brought you to this area originally?
I was living in Boston, where I'm originally from, and I had visited San Francisco, really loved the city, loved the Bay, thought maybe I could live there. And when I got laid off from my job working for the Women's Professional Soccer League, I started looking for sports writer jobs in California. And I ended up getting hired for the Napa Valley Register as a sports reporter.
So how did you make the leap to wine?
Well, I came to Napa Valley where I knew very little about wine and did what I think most people do when they come to wine country. You just kind of fall into it. You start to drink wine and visit wineries and just kind of fall in love. So it was unavoidable, I think.
And how long have you been writing about wine now?
Probably about 6 or 7 years. I was writing about sports and then slowly did a few wine articles here or there, and it just kind of snowballed.
Well, when did you come on to the Chronicle? Because they announced when you came on board.
Yep, I just hit my 1-year anniversary a few weeks ago.
You have had quite the first year.
It's been busy.
How many articles have you done this year?
I could not even tell you. If I were to guess, I'd say it was close to 100 probably.
That's very impressive.
Yeah.
Just the research alone involved in that is impressive.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but I really enjoy it, and I think I'm a natural writer, so it doesn't take me as long to put words to paper as other people tell me it takes them.
Well, that's a rare gift. I mean,
Yeah.
most of us require multiple drafts.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely multiple drafts and editing that it requires, but usually I can sit down and just kind of start writing, and there's not much writer's block that I ever come across, so.
One of the questions that I always get as a tour guide is, what's your favorite wine? So when you were first wandering around the wineries, what was your favorite wine at the time?
At the time, I mean, I think my tastes have changed quite a bit since I moved here about 12 years ago. So at the time, maybe like a Sauvignon Blanc, light whites, and I think we all start around that category, and then you start moving up more into the reds and then the Cabernets and go from there. So
As time goes on, your library of flavors gets bigger
yes.
and bigger,
Yes.
which is important.
I also had a different budget that I was working with back in those days for wine, so that's improved as well over time.
Yes. Well, as a writer, they, of course, they do what they do with wine tour guides. They want you to try the wine.
They do.
That's good. When you were first visiting wineries, which ones were your standouts? Which ones were your favorites?
I think the first wineries I visited were very similar to the wineries that a lot of people visit on their first trips to Napa. I remember going to Visa Tui and the picnic grounds, Beringer. We did the castle, of course. Everyone goes to the castle. Taking the gondola at Sterling. So, those were some of my first experiences, and they were all really beautiful and, are part of how I fell in love with wine country and the valley.
You've gone past that. Now you live in Napa, but do you visit in both counties?
I do. Actually really love Sonoma County and the diversity there and the little bit more of a casual vibe. I love going to West County where it's really quiet and people are kind of fun and diverse and have a different way of life. So I'm over there quite a bit. I'm out in Healdsburg, Russian River, Dry Creek, quite a bit on the weekends, I would say. Yeah.
Well, that area is also very popular with your generation.
Yeah, I think that's something that we've covered a lot at the Chronicle as well. I think certain parts of Sonoma County are a little more affordable still, a little more casual, family friendly. They're not, stuffy. You don't feel like you need to be on your, wear your best or like be on your best behavior all the time. You can have a little more fun and go in larger groups sometimes. So I think those regions definitely lend themselves to more approachable vibe. And then, younger people probably aren't necessarily able to spend the $100, $150, $200 for a tasting as much in Napa.
No?
I can't. I'm not even in my 20s, so. Yes, and I think younger generations seem to be more attracted to these lighter styles of wines as well. So they're not as into these big oaked Cabernets or Chardonnays, and I think the style of Pinot and Chardonnay and some of those other experimental grapes they're doing over there is attractive to younger generations too. I think especially as we've been talking younger generations, they like to discover things and try new things, and they're not just going to drink the same thing every day just because they've decided they like it. So, it's exciting to them to find new stuff. And so there's a lot of fun experimentation going over there. With Italian varieties especially, I'm seeing a lot of. That's really fun. And just like different blends and styles of wine.
Well, that area was so settled by the Italians. Yeah.
It is really interesting how we became such a French-inspired wine country because Italians are the ones who built this wine industry. I mean, look at Robert Mondavi, and he even went the whole French way. So it's actually pretty fascinating how you'd think we would have more of an Italian influence here, but it really didn't stick, and now you're starting to see it come back a little bit, which I think is exciting.
When you go to the wineries in like Russian River and West area, do you let them know who you are?
It depends. Sometimes I'm obviously going to meet with a winemaker and do an interview such as this and want to schedule something. Sometimes we are researching tasting rooms to see what the experience is and if it's something we might want to recommend to our readers, in which case we try to be anonymous. And sometimes it's just me going out, with my husband or my friends, and it's fun. It's more fun to be anonymous sometimes and just enjoy the experience as it is. Sometimes when you're a writer, people treat you differently. They roll out the red carpet, which is really nice, but I like to experience things the way, anyone would walking in. That way I can give a accurate recommendation of something.
They start pulling other bottles out from underneath the counter.
Yes.
That not everyone gets.
Yes, and I have a secret weapon. My husband's a winemaker, so when I bring him along, he can ask a lot of the technical questions, and I can kind of be taking notes in my head and keep the attention on him.
That's excellent, because I've told people that there's nothing quite like tasting with a winemaker.
Yes, I actually really like every once in a while when he is with me for interviews. He always does ask a few questions that didn't occur to me because he's coming from a different side of the business and he's thinking about it differently than I am. So it's quite interesting.
He's actually tasting different things from you also. Yes. Because he's a man and you're a woman.
Yes.
Different palates.
There are times where our palates really align and we're totally in sync. And then there are times where he hates something and I love it, or he likes something and I hate it. And, that's just the beauty of wine.
Yes, men are from Mars, women are from Venus,
yeah.
And their palates are very different.
Yeah, every once in a while we'll do blind tasting, and if I get it right and he doesn't, I like to joke about how I have a better palate than he does. But that's probably not true. He's trained.
Well, the difference is that he's been trained to recognize certain things.
Yes, and that's also an interesting that comes out when we taste together is how I describe things and things that I point out, and he's often the first thing he'll mention are faults that he sees. And I like to look at there are faults that you can recognize, but I might be a little more forgiving to them than he is coming from his background.
Right.
For like Brett, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't mind a little bit of it in the certain types of wine, and he's kind of an all or nothing Brett person.
Oh yeah, the American winemakers would just as soon throw a Molotov cocktail into the winery at that point.
But I do think more tasting rooms could be educational about that. For example, I was talking to someone the other day, every time a winery opens a bottle and it's corked, take that opportunity to take the cork and have whoever you're hosting smell it and try to help them identify that. There's educational opportunities, and I don't think it's something to look down upon. Cork bottles happen all the time. It's no winery's fault, and I think that could be something that more tasting rooms could do.
Well, You know, the number 4 reason why people come to wine country is education.
Yeah.
And number 6 is wine.
Okay, what's number 1?
Well, number 1 is to experience the place. Just
Okay.
the beauty of the place, the culture. When you do a tasting, what's your process? Do you have a particular process, a series of steps you like to go through?
I think I am much more informal than most wine writers out there. I don't come at wine writing as a critic. That's never been my focus. Of course, I taste wines and talk about wines, and every once in a while I might write some tasting notes, but I really am there to tell stories about the people and the places and educate, our readers on wine. So I'm definitely a little more casual about it, I would say. I think my process is going through and doing a first round of, nose and then palate and taking a few notes and then always going back at least a second time, more if I have time. I recently was a judge at the Chronicle Wine Competition, and, we're working pretty quickly. There's a lot of wines to taste every day, so really each go around twice is kind of all you can really give to each one. But as you know, they evolve as they're open and change, and of course I love to prefer when I'm there from a writer's perspective to taste wines, especially if it's the same variety, like lined up together, and be able to compare, which I think more wineries could do than just the one wine at a time thing. I think that's more educational for anyone.
Well, at one time they did more vertical tastings.
Yeah.
I guess about 10, 12 years ago, vertical tastings were much more popular.
Yeah.
And then they've kind of moved away from them.
But
to a
even
certain
just
extent.
tasting, the different, like Cabernet from 6 different regions in Napa, I think that's really educational. And as a consumer, it really helps you figure out, okay, I really seem to like Cabernet from this appellation. So maybe when I'm shopping, I know, for me, it's Rutherford. I almost always single out a Rutherford Cabernet in a lineup of others. So I know if I'm going to a store and there's a selection of Cabernets and one says Rutherford, there's a good chance I'll like it. And I might be more likely to take a chance on that one with my money.
That's fascinating because, the Rutherford Cabernet is a very feminine Cabernet.
Yeah, I would get a lot of hate probably for ever saying that Oakville is not on my top 3 Cabernet appellations, but it really isn't. I definitely like a more elegant wine, a fresher wine. I really like what's coming out of Coombsville these days, a little slightly cooler. Sonoma's doing some really nice cabs these days with a little less heat, so I think that's trending, and we'll see where it goes, but I still like Oakville cabs. They're just not my favorite.
Well, they're a very masculine cab because of all the sulfur. It's a Saturn wine, and Saturn is a masculine planet. Now that's fascinating about your approach, because by writing in that way, you've put yourself more comfortably within the viewpoint of your reader.
Yes, I've always been a journalist first. I went to journalism school. I even in high school was doing journalism classes and have always pretty much wanted to be a journalist. So I think I come at wine writing very different from a lot of wine writers out there. Of course, there are others who took a similar path, but a lot of them fell in love with wine and then decided to write about it. And because I come from the opposite direction, I just think that's the path I've taken, is more storytelling. And then also coming from the position of when I moved out here, I knew very little about wine, and I can understand how it's intimidating and you're afraid to ask questions, and it's really overwhelming because there's so much to learn. I like to stay humble about that and look at my readers, put myself in their shoes. I've been in their shoes, and how can I help them learn about wine without it being scary and just a foreign language, I guess. And writing for the Chronicle allows me to do that because our audience is not a strictly high-end wine collector, wine enthusiast audience. It's not like Spectator or Wine Enthusiast, where anyone who's reading those publications has at least a certain level of interest in wine. We're really talking to the Bay Area, and some of those people really know a lot about wine and collect wine, and some of those people drink barefoot on a Sunday night, but like want to learn more, you know? And that's what's really fun about this job for me, is getting to connect with a broad range of people. I think sometimes people in the industry here forget how important the local business is. I think COVID kind of proved that, like what would have happened if we didn't have day trippers coming up from the Bay Area, you know, during COVID. But yeah, these are the people that are going to be your most likely repeat customers. So
those are the wine club members.
They're the wine club members. They're the ones that are going to attend the parties and that are going to keep exploring. And, you know, I think they're the most important customers potentially.
What trends do you see in the wine world that you really are curious about pursuing?
I mean, I think one of the things that we've been talking about quite a bit today is this attracting younger generations. That seems to be the alarm bell for the wine industry right now. And I'm curious of just seeing ways that wineries are adapting and trying to do that. You know, whether it's just I did an article last month on wineries that are doing after hours events, like little happy hours, just some pizza and some wine and like a, you know, record player. You know, or like sunset happy hours, you can just come and buy the glass, buy the bottle at night, or even wineries that are allowing people to order by the glass or the bottle instead of do a whole tasting. You know, I think you've been to 2 or 3 wineries and it's 4 o'clock, you have time for one more. I think it'd be nice just to have a glass, you know, or split a bottle with some people. So just becoming more approachable, offering games or allowing children, different things. And I think there will always be these really high-end experiences, and they're continuing to evolve, and they're amazing if you can afford them. I don't think many people, you can tell me from your experience, walk away disappointed. No one's ever disappointed when they've been fed caviar or a 5-course meal with an amazing lineup of wines. But I think we need to open the doors to a wider range of people so that they can get into wine and fall in love with it and be lifelong drinkers.
Well, one of the things we saw was that because of COVID, I would say the average age of the staff has dropped by about 35 years.
That's significant.
No, that's significant because what's happening now is attracting a younger clientele.
Do you feel like they have enough experience and knowledge to be successful that? Because I think the other side of that coin is like having someone who's green and you ask questions you're trying to learn and they either give you inaccurate or information or they just don't know the answer, right? Do you feel like that's part of it, or that they're being well trained? And
it took about a year, but by the second year of this, they started getting really good. What are you interested in pursuing?
I really want to get out of Napa and Sonoma a little bit more and visit some of these other regions. You know, I frequently visit like Anderson Valley. Love it out there. It's one of my favorite places. But getting to the Sierra Foothills or Lodi and Livermore, I'm doing a Paso trip in a few weeks. And just, you know, getting outside of this main beat that I have, which is driven by our readership that really cares about Napa and Sonoma, but seeing what else is out there, what the wines are tasting like, what people are doing differently, maybe what they're doing better, you know, and just get a feel for that and see if there's anything there that I can pass on to our readers.
One of the things I love about your writing, and now having a chance to talk with you, I really see where it comes from, is that you are actually quite expert, but you remember when you weren't.
Yes.
And so you're able to, you know, cross that chasm between having the knowledge that people need and presenting it in the way in which they can use it. And that's just really valuable and a lot of fun to read as well.
Thank you. We have a team of editors that help keep me and my colleague Esther in check when it comes to, hey, maybe you need to explain this a little better, define this term. Every once in a while, a slightly geeky wine term might, you know, slip in there and we need to break it down. And so it's definitely a team effort. But overall, you know, I think we're trying to make it as approachable as possible for people to take it in, but also like entertaining writing, hopefully too, where they're interested and they read through the whole story and don't just read a couple paragraphs and their eyes glaze over, which I think a lot of wine writing can be if people aren't careful. And wine geeks don't mind that as much, but you know.
But most people are not wine geeks.
Yeah, and people don't read as much anymore, so we have to do as much as we can to get people there and reading on that page. And we also have an amazing photography team, which is a big part of that. They capture some really awesome images for us that I think probably get people there in the first place. So.
It is a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for doing this today.
Of course.
It was fascinating.
Thanks for having me.